All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Mixed Martial Arts. My name is Austin Shaper, and this is a podcast where we explore the topics of UAP, UFC, and World War III. Today being a World War III episode. Now we have a guest on today, my good friend Eric Gross, a real estate mogul, tycoon. Is that how you say it? Tycoon in
Yeah, it
Tampa,
is.
Florida. I brought him on the show today. We're going to talk some World War III stuff, talk about what's going on with Russia, Ukraine, and just kind of the state of things. Before I started this show, this is who I would basically be on the phone with every day, and we'd be fear mongering each other and saying, "Get ready to get drafted." So he's the perfect guest for this. So what's up, Eric? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, buddy. It's funny because like when Ukraine was first invaded in 2021, we were like messaging each other that day, and we were like, "Oh God, the world's over! Like, what just happened?" And we were both
Yeah.
like, "It's over." And you're like, "I give it a year, and the whole world stops." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
so
now it's
funny."
been like over a year and a half, and
2 years
somehow,
almost.
yeah, almost 2 years, and somehow we're not all dead, which my predictions were wrong. What was your original prediction when this stuff started? I kind of forget what you originally said when it very first happened that February. Did you think it was going to spark off into a direct conflict quickly, or did you think it was going to be like what was your prediction?
I think we talked about like the uh my thought was that Russia was going to defeat Ukraine within like 5 days. And then we were all going to sit there, like the entire world was just going to be like, what the hell just happened? And then we were just going to like move on with our lives. And then obviously have NATO keep like escalating it. So the fact that it's taken 2 years is crazy, but who knows like how long this conflict goes for or it doesn't go for. So it seems like it's a
Yeah,
little crazy right at the point.
I agree. My prediction was 100% wrong too. I thought that there's no way that if United States and NATO is funding directly a conflict against Russia, there's no way that Russia isn't going to eventually want to attack NATO. That was my thoughts. And it kind of seems like, okay, so can you hear my cat, by the way?
No.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. This mic is good. My cat is like standing next to me, meowing so loud. But anyway, so I wanted to get your thoughts on today is supposedly Russia is doing a nuclear test. I sent you an article about that. They're doing some, or not a nuclear test, but it's some sort of nuclear drill involving the civilian population, like outside of Moscow. And it's apparently some theoretical framework where like 70% of their facilities and infrastructure have been destroyed and there's a bunch of radioactive contamination, and that's the like exercise they're doing. And then tomorrow we have the emergency broadcast alert system going off at, I think it's 2:20 p.m. Eastern time zone. And I did an episode earlier today by myself, and I told everybody it was today, so I'm going to sound really stupid, but it's tomorrow. So do you think that there's any connection between the two events happening? Is it purely coincidental? What are your thoughts on the drill and then like the random apparently everybody's going to get it on their phone, like their phone, their tablet, their computer, TV, all that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think they're related. I think the nuclear tests, like the United States used to do that before we were born, like in the 70s and 80s with Cold War, like uh, against Russia. Like I remember teachers telling us that they would do nuclear tests. So like instead of fire drills, they would do like nuclear bomb tests, where it was like you'd go under your desk, cover your head, and like sit underneath. And the teachers were like, we just thought that, that was the way you like avoided a nuke bomb and all this other stuff. And then they were like, you know, over time we kind of realized how silly it was, and they stopped doing it. Um, I do think it's weird that they're planning on like it just being like a major like 70% of the buildings destroyed and
Mm.
you know radioactive waste everywhere. That's really kind of creepy. I think ours, so it's technically through FEMA. So it's technically not through the government. It's through like the federal, and so it is technically the government, but it's through like the federal emergency. Well, it's through the
Yeah.
federal emergency, whatever
Yeah.
it is. And FEMA handles like weather related events and everything.
Yeah.
So, um, I don't know, man. I think it's weird. Have you? So I know this is a World War III thing. Just a sidebar. Have you seen some of the conspiracy theories that this is going to be like what cooks the COVID vaccine in people's
Oh,
bodies?
look at that. He's trying to get me canceled. That's wonderful. That's great. That's great. Wait, so what is the conspiracy? All right, side note before we dive into this, this is a World War III show. We're not conspiracy theorists. I'm just kidding. Oh, wait, so what is, I haven't heard anything about this. What do you mean? COVID vaccine and
So
what now?
it's funny because I saw it on Facebook this morning. It's a bunch of like older real estate agents that I'm friends with on Facebook, like in their 60s, and they were like talking about this broadcast going off. and there's people that are putting it out there that the broadcast is going to emit waves coming from every electrical device, and it's going to cook the COVID vaccine in people
Oh
and kill
God, where
them.
did you hear that? Where did you hear that?
I'm telling you, man, it was on Facebook. It was all over my Facebook this morning, and I thought I was waiting for you to tell me something about it. Like, I was waiting for you to like message me today and be like, "We're gonna be cooked." I think it's an overreach by the government. Like, I think that's kind of part of it. Like, it's
What,
so
an
weird that they
overreach?
have
The
access.
broadcast is an overreach?
Yeah, it's just weird to me that they can like take every device. There should be a way to opt in and opt out of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, there should be a way. Like,
Yeah.
there should be an opt out, and everybody can be opted in, but there should be an opt out. Um, but I don't think they're related. I think it's kind of weird that like Russia's got their nuclear stuff going on. You sent me an article talking about South Korea saying that if North Korea decides to use a nuke, it'll be met with
Mm.
crazy reactions. I just hope that one of the things that like, and me and you have talked about this, is like world leaders could realize that like one nuclear bomb would probably at this day and age point in time be the end of the world. Like, I don't know how like one doesn't set off like 50, doesn't
You
set
think
off like a
so?
thousand. Yeah, I think it'd just be the end. I know your thought was like Russia would use it and then we would like shit our pants and be like, okay, we're sorry. But it's like we have seven. Last time I checked, I think we had like 6,500 or 7,000 nuclear warheads, and
Mm.
Russia is the next closest with like 2,200, and
No,
then
I think
China's
it's the opposite. I think Russia
no,
has
no, no, no,
no. Russia has not as
no.
many as United States, you're saying?
Yeah, the United States has like almost
Oh, that
double
sounds
or
like fake.
triple the next
That sounds
highest.
like some fake news. Where'd you hear that shit? Where, if same dude who told you the COVID vaccines were
CNN.
going to cook us? CNN. Okay, well, never mind. Scratch it. I 100% believe it then.
Yeah. No, I mean, so it's definitely like, I just think that if a nuke did get launched off, I think all of the political leaders would be smart enough to be like, oh, you'd hope that. But I guess like if Hitler had a nuke and at the end of World War II was like, well, this isn't going well, I'm sure he would have launched them bad boys. So
100% he would have used
yeah,
that. Yeah, but Putin and Hitler are different characters. It's oversimplistic when you see people say Putin is Hitler, because like obviously he's doing some
no,
evil shit. I mean, my opinion from the get-go, and I feel like I have to reiterate this every 5 minutes, because anytime I post, like I posted a clip today on TikTok, and all I said that I was surprised that the United States is not preparing their citizens for like nuclear drills or like building bunkers or doing anything when they're poking this bear in Russia and expecting like zero retaliation. But I didn't say anything about it like being justified what Russia did, but I immediately got people commenting saying like we're not poking the bear, this was all Russia's fault. And so like I have to reiterate every time I do an episode, I swear, that I don't agree with what Putin did. I know you don't either. And most people don't.
don't put words in my mouth.
Yeah, most people don't, but at the same don't put words in my mouth. All right, never mind. It's a Putin supporter on the broadcast here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's an oversimplistic thing for somebody to say he's the next Hitler. He's obviously not. But he did do something pretty maniacal. I mean, he's insane. And it's funny because going back to how you and I were talking about what happened at the very beginning in our prediction, they thought they were going to take Kiev in what, 3 days? Isn't that what it was?
Yeah. I mean, I thought they were going to be honest. And they made like a ton of progress, but I guess that's like, depending on what you're reading, because me and you have talked about this, like you'll read one report that talks about how Ukraine's, taking back a little bit of ground or maybe even holding their positions. And then you'll read another article. It doesn't even have to be Russian backed. And it talks about how, Russia's, I think I had a buddy of mine send me an article saying that Russia is, our Ukraine's having 10,000 troops a day surrender to Russian troops, which like if that's the case, like you're talking like a couple more weeks of this war, maybe. Doesn't sound accurate to me, but I don't know. Like maybe it's getting to the point where like Ukraine's like, maybe too it's planned out where it's like Zelensky saying, hey, if we surrender some of our troops, like we could probably try and drag in one of these other countries that's been funding us. Because like the UK, US, and all of them aren't going to take a loss with sending billions of dollars. So maybe they're like telling their guys, like, hey, go surrender. It's for a greater cause. And they're getting some troops to surrender in the hopes that it's going to bring in like a world superpower.
Interesting. I haven't heard that theory. That kind of makes sense. It's kind of like my thoughts on this has been since the beginning is that without eventual direct involvement from NATO or the United States, I do not see any possible way how Ukraine can pull this off. Now they can pull it off for a certain amount of time, you know, and they've been doing that somewhat successfully. I know what you said,
Yeah.
10,000 people a day. I don't know about that. It's really weird because with this war, it's like with social media and all that, the fog of war is like even thicker. It's like depending on who you listen to, you're getting a completely different version of the war. I mean, like this Colonel, what's his name, McGregor guy who I listen to on this dude's YouTube channel, and he used to be in the United States military, and he's got some very good opinions. He definitely knows his stuff, but like he's predicted time and time again, Ukraine will last like another week, 2 weeks. It'll be over by this time. It'll be over. It'll be over, and it's somehow still not over. So clearly, it's not going Russia's way. But I would agree with you that like it's in Ukraine's best interest to drag in one of the superpowers, and if they don't, this is where it gets really dicey and really weird, and why I'm not surprised that more people don't care is because like we're invested how much now? The budget's it's got to be almost 200 billion,
couple hundred
right?
billion. Yeah.
And that's just what we know about. That's just what the public knows about, and it gets even more interesting because Congress just had this like dispute with the Democrats and Republicans and halted the funding for a while. Now they have like some sort of 45-day gap before they figure this out. And then you also have Britain coming out and saying that they're not going to be able to continue to send their equipment, and then you have Poland starting to sound hesitant on sending their equipment. So like you're definitely hearing the tides kind of shift, but where it gets weird as far as it regards to the direct involvement is I agree with what you said. I don't think America can accept. I mean, imagine in a hypothetical scenario, imagine like we just give up and Russia just takes whatever half of Ukraine or however much it wants. We just lost like the biggest investment ever, you know, and I find
and
that
pissed everybody off.
And
not everybody, but China and Russia. I think there's a way Ukraine could win if they would have been smart about it from the beginning. They could have just done guerrilla warfare, just like in Afghanistan. Like you got to think, Afghanistan and the Taliban. You know, they repelled United States forces for 20-ish years, and the way they did it was they didn't care about like ground gained or ground lost. Like that's warfare stopped being about ground gained and ground lost. I think during or right after like the Civil War, I believe, where it was like it used to be you would win a war by taking as much ground as you could as quickly as possible. And then like World War One, actually it was World War One because that was when they started using trench warfare, and it was less of because you were fighting for every inch. So like slowly it went from like as quickly as you could gain ground to where you couldn't gain it anymore. So then what they started doing was just saying, okay, well now it's just a war of attrition, kill as many people on their side as you can, and vice versa. So Ukraine would have been smart, I think, to do just guerrilla warfare. Like, the land, the winters, like Ukraine's like a not great territory. Now, Afghanistan, you have better terrain to do guerrilla warfare, but Ukraine, like you have all the mud in the spring and all this other stuff that they could have used to their advantage. And I feel like they don't have anybody that's smart enough to figure out how to fight Russia. So like when they did this counter offensive in the spring and it failed miserably, they thought they were going to like out muscle Russia. And it's just like, what are you thinking? Like what's the positives? Like you're outnumbered. You don't have, even with our equipment, you're getting our, I don't know, Kroger brand equipment. Like you're not even getting old like the equipment. Full brand. Yeah. You're not even getting like, I mean, you're getting like equipment that was probably used in like Vietnam as well. Yeah. So like, what were you thinking? And then they try to throw everything at them. So it'll definitely get interesting. This is the first time probably during all of it where I'm like, the whole time I kind of thought Ukraine's going to outlast it and Russia's going to have to give up. But I don't know if you read the article I sent you I think it was last week, where like Russia's ruble is about to just like completely collapse. And if that happens, like that's even, they're about to be in like such a bad economic position anyways. Maybe that's the end of it. There's like a million different endings. And we're like, I think it's impossible to guess which way it's going to go.
Yeah. Well, about the Vietnam stuff that you bring up, the Afghanistan, there's this guy, he's like a comedian, but he's also like very well versed in politics and geopolitics. And he was on Joe Rogan's show. His name is Dave Smith. And he was talking about how, Joe Rogan asked him, like, why do you think that NATO kind of provoked this war? Kind of seemingly, I mean, I guess we don't know all the nuances behind what happened behind the scenes, but from the public's perception, I mean, it's fair to at least say that obviously Russia took the bait and that's on them. There was no reason they had to take this kinetic. That was Putin's choice. He could have kept just like a geopolitical dispute rather than like a kinetic hot war. But Dave Smith brought up the point that he thought the reason why it happened is that NATO was trying to bog Russia down in its own Vietnam. Like America has had that experience in Afghanistan, being bogged down in a 20-year war, being bogged down in Vietnam. And it's just kind of like this quagmire stalemate where decisive victory is not really possible, even if you do outnumber and outmanpower the enemy due to the terrain, the guerrilla fighting, like you said, for a variety of reasons. But he thought that the reason why this conflict happened is that NATO wanted to weaken Russia by dragging them into this conflict that's going to be turned into a 10, 20-year war, just like Vietnam, and kind of weaken Russia's economy and infrastructure through that, which I thought that was a pretty brilliant thought. I'd never even thought of that. And it does kind of explain,
yeah. I guess my only question to that would be like, why not sooner? Like in 2014 when it happened, was it just like the leadership that was in there? And then I could also see it being like NATO's way of trying to galvanize Eastern Europe, because like you have to think about all the new NATO members that are trying to come in, like that wouldn't before. Like maybe NATO it's kind of like when World War II was on the horizon, everybody knew it. Same with World War One, like everybody kind of had a feeling that was going to be the case. So what did everybody start doing? You start building all these alliances. You start building your alliance as quickly as you can to try and gather as many. So maybe, I don't know. I don't think, as bad as it sounds, I don't think our politicians are smart enough to think that far ahead. But maybe they were thinking like, hey, World War III is close to happening. So they're like, let's start this little proxy war over here, and then we'll freak everybody out, Sweden, Finland, and all of them, and we'll just be like, oh look, like if you don't join, like this could be you next, and it freaked everybody out. And then it's also got the positives of, I think this has almost made China, Russia, I hate to do this to you, buddy, Brazil, countries like that, kind of pariahs, like for the rest of the world. Like I think a lot of the other nations are like, and sidebar too, you've got reserve currency that comes into all this as well too. Like we've always been the reserve currency. Was this Russia's way of possibly pulling the reserve currency out of hand? So, I think it's kind of made China, Russia, Brazil, and that alliance more of a pariah just to other nations.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to your point, I mean, Finland, Sweden are now trying to get in NATO. I forget which one already just did. I think maybe Finland.
I think it was Finland. I think we were waiting on Sweden because of
Turkey or somebody was holding it up. Hungary, so some idiot was holding it up. But
Turkey, it was Turkey.
Yeah, it does make sense, and it's like there's a couple of thoughts that run through my head when I think of this whole conflict. One is like I just feel like our leaders, like the Lindsey Grahams of the world, are just absolutely insane, because whatever like quarrels we have with Russia, I just don't see any reason why it's worth like so. It's a complicated issue because you and me talked about this a lot now. And like morally, I feel it's right to support Ukraine because I mean, they're being invaded and innocent people are dying. And if you've ever seen any of the videos or anything, I mean, like you would have to be a heartless person to sit there and say, just because of the geopolitics or just because of like the reason I hear often is, oh, Ukraine is corrupt, so we shouldn't support them. I'm like, yeah, but the average person dying has no hand in this corruption. It's not the civilians are dying. A lot of these soldiers are conscripted. So it's like a very complicated war. And morally, I do support it. But this comes to like the debate. I forget where I read this, but I thought it was a pretty good analogy of like if you're faced with two very difficult decisions, you have to choose the one that is morally the least damaging, like the least destructive. So like if you're looking at two bad scenarios, so like point A, we directly get involved with Ukraine. Eventually it reaches this point where either Ukraine doesn't have enough troops left, which I see that as a very, possibility that's going to be happening soon. They're clearly outmanned by Russia. So either they run out of supplies or they run out of troops, and they're at this crossroads where you either concede to Russia, you either, retreat and give Russia basically what they want, or you get direct involvement in. Now, morally, it's right what we're doing to support the people of Ukraine, but is it morally right if we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dying and then by our direct involvement, NATO and or United States, it sparks, and I mean, it would spark. It's hard for us to be able to imagine because like we've seen so many movies and just dramatic things and hasn't played out in that way. But if it turns into a direct conflict, I mean, you're talking about even before it goes nuclear, you're talking about like World War II numbers looking like nothing, like World War II numbers a week. I saw a report. I can't remember if I sent this to you a couple of weeks ago, where the U.S. Army I forget the name of their specific office, but they do like predictions on wars. And they said that in the first year of a war with Russia and the United States, conventionally, they believe that 100,000 soldiers from America would die per year. So like a little over 1 million. And I'm like, that seems like a very conservative estimate. I mean, we were killing 100,000 civilians a week in Japan with
Yeah.
firebombing. So, morally supporting them feels like the right thing to me, definitely. But where it gets very muddy is these leaders like Lindsey Graham and all these crazy people in the government that are just like, whatever, just dump the money into it. We don't care where the money goes. Just dump the money in. We're supporting them, and any consequences be damned. We're not going to worry about that. Russia's a bunch of pussies. They're not going to do anything. But eventually, if they do, and this cooks off into something big, like we may look at this in hindsight and be like, wow, the decision to protect this individual nation ended up, being the precursor to the biggest war in the history of mankind. So like, where do you feel morally the United States should stand? I know it's not an easy question to answer, but like off the top of your head, morally at this point, we've seen how it's turning out and we see kind of the writing on the wall. Do
Yeah.
we back out or do we keep going and be damned the consequences?
I mean, hindsight's 2020, but if you look back at it, like the best situation would have been to just not get involved at all. And as bad as it sounds, like Ukraine get taken in the first couple of weeks. I mean, it sounds terrible, but it's probably
It's
the
the
least amount of
appeasement
civilian
stuff though,
deaths.
right? If you do, that's kind of like
Yeah,
the Hitler appeasement.
it's the least amount of civilian. Yeah, but Hitler, even if he had not been appeased, would have gone to war. It wouldn't have mattered. So it's it's a catch-22 because like I think you'd have probably been better just being like, okay, like let Ukraine defend for itself. It's a nation. It needs to see if it can hold its defense. Obviously, it's a smaller nation, and there is like some stuff that goes into it. But like you said, 100,000 a year seems super low. I would think it'd almost be like 100,000 a month or like 100,000 a week almost
Yeah, a
because
week
of
sounds more
the
likely to me.
weapons. Yeah, but um, yeah, I mean that's probably what I would have done. I think it's almost, and I know this is like a funny like meme going around on the internet, but it's like you kind of look at the parallels right now of like us and Rome at the very end. That's kind of where we're at. And like
Mm.
Rome, that was like one of the biggest things that brought Rome down was like really bad leadership. The politics were very corrupt. Their defenses were struggling heavily. They got their hands mixed up in too many conflicts that spread them out super thin. They couldn't control any of the um, sorry, outside for whatever reason, like me on geopolitical stuff. It's the smoke. The Canada smoke is like
Yeah,
getting
that's
to me.
so weird. Tell everybody that real quick, just since you're all going into conspiracy land on this show for no reason, you might as well dive into this one too. What's going on with the
I couldn't
smoke?
be on an Austin Shaper podcast and not talk a single conspiracy.
Yeah.
So we're in Tampa, and it's like it's just today. It's so weird, but it's super smoky here. This is the first time. Actually, it happened yesterday. I have a really good sunset that Austin saw, and part of the reason that sunset looks like that is because of the smoke that's here. And I guess we were watching the news this morning and they said it's from a wildfire. Now, I don't know if it was the Canada ones or not. My mom said that the news said it was from Canada. I didn't hear that. But it's like, it's super, like, it's very hazy. Like, the most hazy I've ever, it literally looks like it's foggy, but it's 4 o'clock. So, it's really odd.
Well, get your masky on. How about that?
I know, right? Um, No, but I just think it's probably something like that, man. I just think we have leaders that suck. I think politics. You're a big Tucker Carlson guy because he likes Zen. So, hell yeah. He had something that was really good. I don't know if I shared it with you or not, but it was like a 6 minute video, and he was talking about how politics, like he's always kind of thought, and I'm the same way. I've always thought of America as like in this good light. Like America is this country that's really good.
Mm,
Our leaders are good. Sometimes we make mistakes, but overall, we're a good country
mm,
that's trying to do our
mm.
best. He brought up a really good point that, like, in his 50 years, he never thought, goodness gracious, America could do anything wrong. So he spent this like 6 minutes talking about how, like, it kind of makes sense, though, that our system is corrupt because the people, like, if I'm selling a good to somebody, I've got to have something that people want to purchase. Politics have nothing that they offer value wise to keep them in that power, to make money, or to be in that position. People, even during the Revolutionary War, the people that decided to stand up and make decisions and stuff like that were people that wanted to see a change. They wanted to see a change from Britain. They wanted freedom. They didn't want taxation without representation. They wanted all of these rights. They wanted their own land. I'm sure there was some selfish tendencies in there, but nowadays politicians, it's all selfish tendency. Like somebody becomes a politician, maybe even with the hopes of making a change, and then as you get into the system, you get really corrupt. And he was kind of talking about, I'll send it to you, and you can maybe send it to your audience. But it was really good. It was kind of talking about how the reason everything is so corrupt the way it is because they realize that the only way that they continue to do it, the only way that like the people in power can stay in power is they have to like tax people to the point where they can't make any money, which is not seen as a good thing, or they can kind of work behind the scenes and do these, work their way through these things. So I must just think it's like really bad leadership on America's part. I think most of our politicians don't care about us. I've seen it locally with some stuff recently that's happened in my life. It was actually in Cincinnati, but where I'm a part of something up there, real estate wise, where it's like you take people and then you give them a little bit of power and they go like, it's weird. They go like almost insane with it. So, or they go crazy, or they get like really like prideful, or they get really arrogant and all these other things. So, I know this was a tangent, and for your viewers, I have ADHD, but I just think it's like really bad leadership from the United States. I think we've screwed up. I think we're probably too far into this to give up. I think World War III almost guarantees disaster. The smartest man to ever live, Albert Einstein said, World War III, our World War, not the next great world war, but the one after that will be fought with sticks and stones, because it's like there's not going to be anything left. Like there's our technology, you have drones, you have all of these crazy high like cyber security, cyber hacking, everything. So the next war is going to be, I mean, truthfully, it'll probably take out, I'd say, more than 3/4 of the population if it gets to that point.
Yeah, and it's funny. I tried to say that the other week, though, like the quote that Albert says, I butchered it like that too. I'm like, World War IV is World War III with sticks and stones. It's complicated, but I know what your point is. And yeah, I mean, so it's interesting because, like you said, if you thought if a nuke kind of gets fired, that's kind of like Armageddon. I have this weird thought, and maybe it's because like I admittedly have a bias where like I feel like I just can't perceive that. It just is out of the realm of possibility in my mind already. So I'm not the best person to assess the possibility of that, but I just think that there's some sort of middle ground where nuclear weapons are going to be used at some point. That is my opinion. I forget the quote, but from one of Dan Carlin's hardcore history episodes, he talked about how like so first the analogy of a man walking a tightrope for a certain amount of time, you can congratulate him. I think he said for like walking it for however long we've done it since we had nukes, World War II, like 90 years, whatever it is. But to expect him to do it for hundreds of years would be madness. So to expect somebody to be able to walk the tightrope, AKA to be able to humanity have nuclear weapons and not use them again, I mean, it's impossible. It's an eventuality, especially tying into what you said, the corrupt people who are at the helm of this thing. I mean, it's funny because the job description that these guys are doing, it's almost like we need to somehow get together and like anybody who wants this job, it automatically disqualifies them from being able to get this job because what's the quote? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's very hard to get into these positions. I don't think they're all blanket level deep state evil lizards like you hear, but I just think that there's, like you said, some of them probably go in with good intentions. I don't think very many, but some of them do. But regardless, these are the crazy people who are at the helm. Like I always think of Lindsey Graham because he just says some of the dumbest shit. I mean, he was the one who came on camera like a month or two ago and said, this is the best money we've ever spent killing Russians. And I'm just like, man, this is not something you say if you're trying to keep your population safe. I mean, Russia, you and me were debating who's got the most nukes. I guess when it comes down to it, don't even matter because there's so many nukes to blow the world up 1,000 times over. And if this doesn't get resolved peacefully quickly, I think this hasn't gone in the time frame I expected. And predicting the unpredictable is like a futile task. I mean, this is war. The fog of war is even thicker now with social media and disinformation and all that. So it's very hard to predict. But if you look at the history, I know you were a big World War II, World War I guy. We've read the same books. And it leads me to believe the shit always starts in Europe. It's always crazy, ambitious leaders. And they always tell us it's not going to happen. What Roosevelt, before he got into office, said, your American boys will not be fighting in a European war if you vote for me. 6 months later, they're storming the beaches of Omaha. So it's just the way it goes. I see this as playing out in a very similar way. Do you have any final thoughts on this weird crux of where we're at? I want to get you out of here in a minute. I don't want to keep you all day, but last thoughts about when we get to this middle ground of Ukraine either runs out of troops or they run out of equipment, which it looks like we're kind of converging on that point. And I don't know if you saw the article I sent you about the real estate market here. Is a lot of people predicting it to tank. So it's like we have our own domestic problems that the population is, a lot of people were putting up the Ukraine flags when this first started, and they've really felt empathy towards Ukraine. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. You should have a heart for these people. But now it's like people are seeing the upcoming presidential election. They're seeing all the domestic issues. What is your prediction on where we converge in 2024 on the presidential election, the border crisis, combined with economic inflation and the real estate stuff, combined with China's attempt to take Taiwan and this Russia-Ukraine? Like, where do you think that this is good? Are we going to be okay next year? Is this down, or are we all going to die? Am I building a bunker or not, Eric? Tell me.
You're building a bunker. Okay, so I'll start with the real estate thing because that's the thing I know most. The article you sent me is commercial real estate. I don't think residential real estate is going to crash. Commercial real estate, I do think is going to crash. Commercial real estate, the reason it will crash is because residential, you can lock in a long-term 30-year loan at 2% interest rate, like most buyers did in 2021 and 2022. Keeps your payments relatively low. Commercial real estate, typically they're on loans that are balloon payments. So like you might get like a 5 or a 7 or a 10-year loan. So a lot of people bought commercial buildings in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023 with the plans of refinancing once they got everything situated in the building to pull their money out. We can't refinance because rates are too high and commercial rates are usually higher. Mm-hmm. So my outlook on the economy is super pessimistic. I think no matter what you think World War III wise, which would actually probably lead us closer to World War III because money has a huge play in it. I think we could be looking at like a Germany hyperinflation in the 1930s where they were buying a loaf of bread with a wheelbarrow of money. Like they were literally taking a wheelbarrow of money to buy a loaf of bread. That's how devalued their money was. It happens to most countries. I'm reading a really good book. I just started it called Broken Money, and it kind of talks about how our system, the money system, it changes every so often, and we're probably at like an upcoming change. And I'm not a big crypto guy, but there's going to be something else that takes over like just normal fiat money because it's no longer gold backed. So you're talking about like probably our economy is going to go through. I'd say like truthfully, the next year or two, I think is going to be. There's two ways I look at it. I think it's going to be very close to 2008 in terms of severity, or I think it's going to be 10 times worse. Like I think there could be. I think we could look back and be like, well, that was. Or we could look back and I'm an idiot and we're wrong and nobody listens to this podcast, hopefully, and we make
definitely
it out. So, but I just think it's going to be really, really bad. I think we printed off, I think it's like 40% of our total money that's in circulation was printed off in the past 2 years. You've got, nobody wants to buy treasury, or everybody wants to buy treasuries. You typically see a flight to treasuries, which kind of affects it. And you're not really seeing that right now. Anytime something like this is happening, everything's really out of whack. You've got a treasury inverse that's the longest ever in history. You've got the treasury going opposite of equities, which has never happened. You've got commercial real estate that's really going to struggle. You've got us sending over $200 billion to Ukraine. You've got, just a FY, like, I don't know how to say it in a not shitty way, but like me and my family do very well. We've been very blessed with our businesses. And like, I probably have the conversation and we're always looking to give back and donate and do whatever we can to help people. Like if we see somebody at the grocery store who needs it, we'll buy their groceries because like we've been blessed, but I don't even know how people do it. Like, I don't know how people live. Like you see the living expenses. I think it's all going to come into play. Now, the weird thing is you have good job security and stuff like that right now. I don't know if that's going to happen in the future. You take all of that and then you take what's happening in the like other parts of the world right now and everything. And it tends to be, I think me and you have talked about this. It tends to be that everybody during your present time period always thinks it's the end of the world. Like everybody's always just like that's been said for thousands of years. Like everybody's like, well, this is the next big thing. And we always end up making it out of it. we'll end up making it out of this too somehow, maybe with only a quarter of the people that went into it. Maybe not, who knows? But just like I'm very pessimistic. I don't think we have good leaders anymore. I don't think there's a lot of good people out there. I do think there's a lot of good people. I think like evil is starting to corrupt, which kind of tells me that maybe it's getting closer to the end of things. And I think a lot of people are really selfish. A lot of people have their own intentions and don't care if it brings down the whole world, as long as they're doing what pleases them or what solves their cravings or their. And I think that's what's wrong with our leaders. I think that's probably what's going through Putin's head, is like he wants to make a name for himself, and he's getting towards the end of his life, and now it's like I need to build a legacy. I don't think Joe Biden could make a peanut butter sandwich right now. I don't even know if he knows where he's at. So like he's running our stuff. Like so,
he's very confident.
Yeah. The other thing, and Austin knows I don't care about politics. I think all of our presidents suck. I don't like Trump, but Trump was making fun of Biden over the weekend, and it was the funniest thing ever. Where he's talking about it, he's like the funny thing is he doesn't know how to get off a stage. It's left or right. He's turning around.
Doing like circles. It's crazy, so dude. The state of our politicians. Yeah, going off of what you said, it's hard not to be pessimistic, and like I kind of walk a thin line doing this show because I don't ever want to be like a fear monger who's just telling everybody the world is not, the end is nigh, it's all over.
And as you have an alien in your background.
Exactly. Well, maybe they'll save us. I don't think that either. But no, I don't think that they'll come kill us after the nukes go off. But it's interesting because I have to walk this thin line because you have to call a spade, and like to your point, I have felt that way as well. Like people are always like, the end, it's all over, Armageddon soon. And I'm like, man, people have been saying that forever. But then I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, the pendulum, maybe it's not. I don't think it's the end of the world. I just don't, just because I can't fathom it. I have no evidence to back that up. I mean, we're definitely closer to a nuclear war than we were in the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think that's fair to say. But it's interesting because the pendulum has swung so far to the evil side. I mean, like post World War II and even post World War I, you kept hearing never again. People learned their lesson. Humanity learned their lesson. They're never going to let this happen again. And for a while, that does work. And they kind of rode that wave of prosperity and peace for a long time. But what happens is, what is the old saying? I can never say it right. Like easy times create easy men. You know what I mean? And then the hard times.
The hard times create hard men. Yeah, like hard men, and then hard men create easy times. Easy times create easy men. Yeah.
Exactly. So now I think the pendulum has swung, and we are at this crazy influx where like the population is waking up to the severity of the political corruption due to things like social media. They're waking up. I mean, it's really weird. It's like everybody I bump into is a damn conspiracy theorist now. Like every grandma, every person I bump into.
My mom's a conspiracy theorist.
They all are, dude. And it's almost like the term is like, it's a conspiracy theorist to say this. Like conspiracy theorist was actually a term used by the CIA, but it was. And at this day and age, if you haven't woken up to the corruption, I mean, you have to be asleep at the freaking wheel. And I think the pendulum has swung so far. I don't think it's the end of times, but I do think the pendulum is going to swing back. But before that happens, I think a lot of death and destruction is probably likely. And I don't know what that looks like, but it's hard for me to talk about it because I don't want to be negative, but
I do like daily Bible readings. If you read the like Old Testament, there's like a constant pattern that is like exposed in the Old Testament that everybody always talks about. And it's like the Israelites do something very bad. God punishes them severely. And then they immediately repent and are like, we won't do it again. It won't happen. Like they change their ways for like one leader. And then after that leader's out, you get one more bad leader that comes in, and they're right back to doing the same thing. And then it's over and over and over and over again. And I almost think that's like I think it's the tale of like humans. Like there's no going away from it. Like it's just what it is. And it sucks that there's evilness in the world. And I think there's things that people can do. I think the thing that sucks is there's so many people that are selfish. So there's nobody to like pull us out of it right now. Like there's not. Like if you just go out in public, there's not a lot of kindness or smiling or cares or respect for one another. There's a lot of hatred. There's a lot of like me, mine, like I don't, whatever it is. Like that's what's probably like doing it. But I really think we're like in one of those time periods, and it sucks. But I think we're in one of those time periods where like couple generations have passed. There was prosperity. People had just suffered through World War I and then World War II. And I think it was like, I think it was God's way of saying, like, you guys have just gone so far off the edge. And like, I think we're back to it again because, again, you had 40, 50 years of really good years. And now you've got people that are like, people will do anything they can to get over on somebody. Everybody's looking to make a quick buck. You've got, I'm not judging anybody, but the way half the people population makes money is posting content that they shouldn't be posting. You've got like just like craziness. You've got adultery. You've got evilness. You've got sin. You've got selfishness.
Mm.
You've got really bad leaders, and it kind of stews together. And I think it's just one of those things that when you have that, like there's gonna be consequences. It's kind of bleeding out throughout all of society. Most people are that way, and now we have to face it.
I agree with everything you just said. I thought that was a very good summary. Okay, now wrapping up, got one last thing. Would you think that it's smart to be like a prepper? Because I watch some prepper videos and I'm always just like, oh man, they take it so serious. And like, it's funny because I talk about it all the time, and then I don't really prepare. And I can see both sides of it. One, I think there's nothing wrong with wanting to protect your family. I think it's this smart move. I don't think you should go crazy, build a bunker and have an RPG in your closet, but there's nothing wrong with like getting canned goods, medicine, weapons. But like, I watch some prepper channels and it's like they all think it's going to be like the Wolverines fighting each other in the American turf. I just don't. I don't get what movies they. I just one. I think it's impossible to escape whatever's coming. I think you can hide in your bunker all you want, but when the world shifts in this dramatic of a way, my personal opinion is that you should protect your family, obviously, but I think the ones who are spending all their money prepping and hiding in their bunkers are probably going to be some of the first to go. But before I get out of here, what are your thoughts on like preparing for this? Like everything we just talked about, what do we do about it? Nothing. What do we do?
Yeah, nothing. I wouldn't prepare. Like my thing that I've always like argued it with is I wouldn't prep because like I don't want to outlast. One, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. I fully believe like whatever God wants to have happen, I could build a bunker, and then on my way down, I could trip and like break my neck, and it's not going to make a difference. So I think prepping is dumb. Kind of. I mean, personally, if you're going to prep, congratulations, you're going to outlive everybody, and then it's going to be like you and like 10 people on this earth, and you're like going to read like I don't know. You're going to go back thousands of years. You're going to make it until your supplies run out. Like instead of prepping, you'd be smarter to like learn how to like fish, hunt, live off the land, like just like self take care of yourself. Yeah. That's the only way I would do it. But if I was going to do it, like if I was a prepper, I'd be moving to like Montana or Wyoming where you have like 4 people per 10 square miles because your chances of running into somebody are so low. I couldn't do it in Florida. Like no matter where I prep down here, I'd die. Where you're at in Ohio, if you prep, you're going to die. I will literally send you.
Is there a point where you will prep? Is there a point like if it gets so bad, like nothing, like Russia's like, we're sending 3 nukes to you tomorrow, specifically Tampa, and you're just like,
I don't care. Yeah, I'm just like, fuck it. Like it was cool. I mean, I'd probably try to drive away from here, but what's prepping going to do if the world's going to end? Like,
not the world ending, but just the start of World War III, we'll say.
Me and you are getting drafted, buddy. There's prepping is useless. You better have your.
I think I'm above the draft age, so I think I'm okay.
No, they don't care. I think in World War II, well, for sure, like Japan's draft age was like 70 by the end of it.
Yeah.
So you're not above the draft age. You're above the current draft age, but
true. Peacetime.
Another podcast discussion. Half the population is undraftable just based off of BMI.
So yeah, they start eating Twinkies every day. Get me out of this war. If I'm too fat to fit in the trench, how can they bring me?
Yeah, no, prepping is dumb. But I mean, I guess I understand it. There's it's a futile like thinking that your survival's in your own hands, and it's like it's not like at all. It's futile. There's no actual. I think to people it's like a false form of like security of saying like if I'm prepping, I control my own fate, and then they get shot in the forehead running down to their bunker, and everybody's like, well,
yeah. I can see both perspectives. I think to a degree it's reasonable, totally. But I just don't know if you can escape what's coming. But I really appreciate you coming on, dude. I know we've been trying to plan this out for a little while, and I'd like to have you back on again. Any last thoughts? Anything you'd like to plug real quick about your real estate? Anything that the people should hear before we get you out of here?
No, I mean, if anybody's looking to buy a house in Tampa or Cincinnati, we'd love to help, especially if it's for a bunker. We do bunker sales. No, I don't like to plug anything. I definitely want to make it back on. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff. I think the whole like economy thing, you should probably do like a whole podcast on that.
Definitely.
If you wanted to do some crazy stuff, there's a lot of stuff that's like in the works in terms of like where I think our economy is going that a lot of people would be interested in stuff like that.
I would love to have you on for that. I don't follow that as closely, so I'd love to have you on again. And we'll do this again sometime, buddy. But thanks so much for coming on, man. What a great episode. And I'll talk to you sometime soon. All right.
Sounds good. See you, buddy.
All right, brother. Peace out.